Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
Raw video like this is changing public perception of police dogs. Here, police in St. Paul, Minnesota use a canine unit, a dog and a handler, to apprehend Frank Baker. Baker's an African-American man who was identified, mistakenly, as a criminal suspect.
Well, what I was hearing was, get out the car with your hands up and walk toward us. So I walked toward them, and I took like about 7 or 8 steps. And they said, turn around. As soon as I turned around, he let the dog out on me. And the dog just started biting me and just tearing me up. That dog, he made me a cripple, deformed all my life. I can't dance no more. I can't play sports no more. I can't run. That's all. My whole life, I was playing football and ran track and did things. I can't do that no more. I can't do it. I love dogs all my life. Now, I fear dogs.
Cut that in. Good boy. Good boy.
Baker got an apology from the police chief and a settlement. And police canine handlers would say that the severity of injuries here make this case an outlier. For decades now, police have considered dogs to be a valuable tool for subduing potentially dangerous suspects. Bites are seen as a form of pain compliance that quickly convinces a combative person to hold still for arrest. It does mean injuries, sometimes serious ones, but police say that's preferable to risking the safety of officers and civilians. Officer Dan Lesser of the Spokane Police Department says he weighs several factors before he lets his dog loose on anyone.
What is the risk of allowing this guy to escape armed with a gun? What kind of damage, what kind of mayhem is he going to cause if we allow him to escape and go carjack a car, go kill somebody else? Those are the factors that I'm constantly running through my head. You know, severity of crime, poses immediate danger to ourselves or others. You know, he's actively resisting evading arrest.
Canine units can also be good public relations. They're the familiar, likable face of law enforcement. Though the dogs also have some very negative associations, especially the lingering memories of their use during the civil rights era. A series of lawsuits in the 1990s led to tighter rules, and reformers say things generally got better. But in the last decade or so, the number of police dog bites has been growing again. That's according to emergency room estimates by the CDC. And with the advent of police body cameras, we're now getting a close-up view of what canine apprehensions actually look like. Here, San Diego police are responding to a report of a man walking through traffic brandishing a machete, though at this moment his hands are empty. When he ignores verbal commands from the police, they quickly use a canine to try to get him to comply.
You're gonna get bitten by the dog.
I'm going to the station.
Get on the ground, pocket. Get on the ground, I said. Roll onto your stomach! Good boy. Roll onto your stomach! Give me your hands!
We showed this scene to a use of force expert, former cop and now assistant professor of law Seth Stoughton. He says a dog can actually make it harder for someone to obey an officer's commands.
It's very likely that when you get bitten by a dog, you just look at the dog as the source of pain and you do everything you can to address that pain, and you'll deal with that other stuff, those shouted commands, you'll deal with that later when the pain stops.
Hey, stop fighting so we can get the dog off you. Give us your hands.
It's going to be exponentially more difficult for someone who is experiencing some form of mental health or substance crisis.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Okay. I'm not resisting.
Okay, let me have your hands. Let me have your hands. Hey, stop kicking!
Since Ferguson, American police have been under pressure to de-escalate encounters like this, to find ways to slow things down and use less force. But videos show dogs having the opposite effect, escalating things, especially when the suspect may be mentally impaired. Here's our last and most extreme example. San Diego police again, responding to a report of a naked man. He's incoherent and pretty obviously unarmed. His mistake is telling the police no.
Turn around, Josiah. Just turn around.
Turn around.
Turn around. Turn around.
No! No!
Okay.
Keep your hands on your back. Hands on your back. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
21 copy.
Give me some fire.
Stop resisting.
112, Henry, SIC.
Yeah, so when someone is naked, that's what we call a clue. It's a pretty good indication that they're either experiencing some mental health issues or some substance abuse issues.
The biting lasted for 52 seconds, causing extensive injuries. Generally, police are not supposed to use force like this unless they have reason to believe a person poses a threat of serious injury to someone else. In this case, they cited the threat posed by the man's clenched fists, plus the fact that there were stones on the ground which he might have picked up.
So it's not that dogs are always excessive. It's not that dogs have no role. They can bring a lot to the table in the right situations. But we have to start from the baseline that a dog bite is a very serious use of force.
There are no detailed national statistics on police dog bites. We don't have a reliable count of how often the dogs bite people, much less how long the bites tend to last. So the public is left with these videos. Some handlers have resisted wearing body cameras because they believe gory images of longer bites will be used out of context and misunderstood. The videos also make it easier to sue and win settlements, which is what happened here. But Seth Stoughton says resisting the cameras is the wrong response.
So I'm a little bit skeptical of the argument that we should be worried about video because it will require us to justify things to the public. I think the right response there is yes, we should be justifying things to the public. And if there's things that we cannot justify to the public, then maybe that's a clue that we shouldn't be using them.
Yeah, I saw. You got some barking going on. All the cell medics. 10-4, 29.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
County. This is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if some, if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt-free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it and each of you gave $1, and that was every month. Oh my God! Yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.